Hi, everyone, and welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. We have a segment queued up from 1986, a big year for the film industry. That's when the Pixar animation studio first launched. Tom Cruise was fawned over as Maverick with the debut of Top Gun, and James Cameron released one of the top sci-fi films of all time, Aliens. Now, what was being discussed in Ontario's Parliament was far from science fiction. Let's take a listen.
Oral questions. The Leader of the Opposition.
The next question. Keep it here anyway. Can't you figure out what it's for? I have a question for the Premier with regard to the former clerk of the legislature. Yesterday, the Treasurer, who, let us recall, negotiated this arrangement, said as follows: the former clerk is entitled to a continuation of his job for as long as he lives or as long as he can perform the job. May I ask the Premier, was it the Premier's position, belief, that the former clerk could no longer perform his job?
Premier?
I think I discussed this with you yesterday, and I'd rather not be dragged into personalities on this issue. But as I said to you yesterday, and I think it answers your question, is that we believed it was time for change in the legislature. Certainly there were consultations with others. Your party willingly participated in choosing of a new clerk, which we're delighted to have here. And I think that sense, as I read this legislature, and knowing a number of the members, was predominant here. There was in no way an attempt to discredit personally the former clerk, and I really don't want to put these things on an individual or personality level, but it was felt, and as I said, that we were due for change here, and that's what led us to the conclusion. Mr. Lewis, as you know, had served here for a great number of years, some 40-odd years, as I recall. He was 75 years old, and I think there's a sense that no one has the right to a lifetime tenure on any particular job. There was probably an error in the drafting of the legislation in 1974, and that we should move forward.
Supplementary?
Well, the reality, Premier, is that you made a decision. You made a decision that replacing the clerk was a priority. The public of Ontario is being asked by the government to provide $91,000 annual salary, a car and driver, generous office space, $47,000 cost for an office, a one-time only payment of $117,000, an annuity which costs $200,000, new office furniture for $8,000, and additional costs. The public of Ontario is being asked to pay that amount of money to the clerk in order to effect a change. I think the public whose money you are spending has a simple question to ask you. Do you think that the former clerk could continue to perform his job or not? You made the decision. The public is entitled to know what the Premier of this province thought about his ability to do the job.
Premier?
And then the public can assess whether you made a reasonable deal or not.
Premier?
I wish the honourable member opposite would not try to drag me into a discussion that I'm not going to participate in about discussing his personality or particularly discussing his particular characteristics one way or the other. And I would hope that the honourable member could keep the discussion above that. You will recall that the view was that he had in a sense, his job was equivalent to a judge under the old legislation, and that we wanted to be as fair-minded as we could. You're critical of the amount that is being discussed. I agree with you. It's a lot of money, and it's being discussed by a number of people at the present time.
Final supplementary?
While you attempt to rewrite the deal which you made to replace the clerk, the public has one simple question. The question is whether you replaced him just because you felt like spending $2 million to get change, or because you thought the public would be better served because the former clerk was incompetent. Now, if there was no problem with the previous clerk, if he was capable of doing his job, if you weren't discriminating against him because of age, then the public wants to know why they're spending $2 million to effect change at the table. No members of the public, hardly any, knew of the former clerk, knew of the present clerk, or have their daily lives affected by what happens at the table in this assembly.
Premier.
They want to know why
Order.
you changed the clerk and whether you believe he was capable
Order.
of doing the job.
Premier.
Have the courage to stand up and answer that question.
Order. Premier.
I'm sure that the former clerk appreciates very much your assistance in making him a public figure, and I'm sure that he'd want to express that gratitude to you on his behalf. I don't think my honourable friend can have it both ways. On one hand, argue that he should have gone on forever, and on the other hand, saying the settlement was too generous. I just have difficulty understanding your position. You're saying he should have stayed, or he was too expensive for him to go, or we shouldn't have treated him in a fair-minded way. I'm not sure what you're saying in the circumstances, but I repeat to my honourable friend that there are many changes that have taken place in this House and in the administration of this province, some of which you approve of, some of which you do not approve of. You wouldn't have done them. We know your approach to these matters. You had 42 years to do the kinds of things you want to do. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't think the honourable member's figures are accurate. Well, my honourable friend would spend $650 million for an oil company. I mean, you can make your own choices on these matters.
Order. New question. The Leader of the Opposition.
Set that up.
Well, no, we would have left him in the chair. We didn't think he was too old to do the job. We didn't think he was too old to do the job.
Yeah.
New question.
Let's get Herb up to ask the question.
We'd have put you in cabinet.
Order. 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 I'll recognize the Leader of the Opposition for the second question.
There's a question for you.
We think people who are 75 years
Order.
of age are quite capable of doing the job. We don't fire people because they're 75.
Order. 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 New question, the Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah, Ramsey's got your limo. Herb.
That's right. How do you feel about that? Ramsey's going to be in cabinet before you are, Herb. How about that? No doubt about that.
We heard the vote was 49-1. Is that right? I have a
To which minister?
I have a question for the Minister of Colleges and Universities. It turns out, we now find out, Minister, that with regard to General Motors looking for skilled workers outside of this country, while there are 400,000 Ontarians unemployed, that you, in fact, were informed of their intent to advertise overseas, and you were therefore aware of the shortage of skilled tool and die workers to fill the jobs at General Motors. Could you outline specifically what steps you took after you discovered that?
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't know where the Leader of the Opposition gets his misinformation, but that is misinformation. I was not personally informed of their intention to advertise for workers overseas. As to what steps we are taking, the Leader of the Opposition should know, because he's been a Conservative for many years, and he has a good affiliation with his party in Ottawa, that long-term industrial training and institutional training is the primary responsibility of the federal government. And if he's really concerned, Mr. Speaker, if he is, well, we'll give them a chance to hoot and howl. We'll give them a chance to hoot and howl. Well, maybe you'll get to it. Are you done?
Order.
And the fact is that their Conservative brothers and sisters in Ottawa, through their Canadian job strategy, denied Ontario and Canada some $200 million annually over the next 2 years in this critical area of skills training. So if they're really concerned, their discussion should take place in first instance in Ottawa.
Supplementary.
I presume you're talking about the same Prime Minister who was lauded by your Premier when he was in Tokyo as a great conciliator, someone who's bringing Canada together. That is probably the same Prime Minister you're talking about.
Order. Was that your question?
Mr. Speaker, in my
Was that your question?
No, it was not.
No.
I want to
Supplementary?
ask the Minister in my supplementary question this question. It was reported in the Toronto Star today that General Motors indicated that permission had been obtained from both Canada Manpower and the Ontario Skills Development Ministry to seek the workers abroad.
Is that you?
So your suggestion that you didn't know about it indicates either your ministerial incompetence or your unawareness of what is going on in your own ministry. My question, therefore, to the Minister is this. A group of 83 employers has approached Conestoga College for an apprenticeship program, essentially for people who will be equipped to repair robots, the robots that are going into the auto plants that are being installed in Ontario. To date, many months later, Conestoga College cannot get approval from your ministry for the apprenticeship program. Why have you refused to approve the apprenticeship program that 83 employers are seeking to get and that Conestoga College is willing to put in place?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition suggests that in his initial question, suggested that General Motors consulted me directly about the lack of skilled tradesmen for their Oshawa facilities. And then he reads an article about consultation with the Ministry of Skills Development. The fact is that our representations to Ottawa in respect of the lack of skilled tradesmen have fallen on deaf ears. It is the Ministry of... The Leader of the Opposition...
Order.
The Leader of the Opposition knows full well that it's the Canada Employment and Immigration Commission that makes a determination as to whether or not employees can be, in effect, brought in from overseas. And it's a matter of an immigration question and determination in that area. We have reminded them about the lack of skilled workers and made every supplication that we could think of up until this point to suggest to them that they rework their Canadian job strategy so that training could go on. And we will continue to do that, and we'll ensure that training goes on in Ontario. Now, as far as the Conestoga College situation is concerned, the entire apprenticeship system, as the Leader of the Opposition knows, is based on employer demands and employers hiring apprentices. And then the system falls into place. And we have some concern with the apprenticeship system, and we're undertaking a review of it.
Final supplementary.
With regard to your complaints about Ottawa...
Final supplementary.
I remind you of the refrain, and this is not the question I put. I remind you of the refrain of your leader. Oh, don't get nervous. Don't get nervous now.
Final supplementary.
Well, we'll get a chance later on. Let me refer you to the question you didn't answer with regard to the apprenticeships at Conestoga. I have here a letter dated October 2nd addressed to you from Delta Enterprises Sarnia on behalf of the 83 employers. They say in late May or early June of this year, Conestoga sent the curriculum to your department for approval. Last I talked to them about a week ago, they had heard nothing yet. They have been trying to expedite approval of this program since they anticipated having a class of electric motor repair apprentices in February. Everything's in place. The people willing to take the apprentice program, the employers willing to hire them, Conestoga willing to run the course, and you sit on it and don't approve apprenticeship programs. Stop complaining to the federal government. Stop complaining here.
Order.
Stop allowing people to advertise over here. When are you going to approve the apprenticeship program?
Order, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition reminded me of a refrain. Let's remind the people of Ontario about yesterday's refrain when a simple motion took 45 minutes to determine while the bells rang to see if we could vote on a committee report. Let's talk about that refrain. Let's see who's getting things done and not getting things done.
Order. New question. The member for York South.
Speaker, my question is to the Premier. It concerns information which we have just received about the Ontario Hydro pension plan. I wonder if the Premier could comment on the following facts. The Hydro plan has a surplus currently of $370 million, which is now projected to grow to $690 million under some revised accounting practices to be implemented in January of 1987. These accounting practices apply, as the Premier will know, to surpluses right across the province and are going to increase the amount of so-called pension surpluses astronomically in the next few months. I wonder if the Premier can comment on the fact that as a result of this so-called surplus, Hydro will not be making any contributions to the plan for 1986 or for 1987, but its employees will continue to have to contribute their share, and that the plan contains no indexing provisions whatsoever, and Hydro is refusing to give its employees the right to share with it the management of the plan. I wonder how the Premier feels about that and these facts, particularly in light of what is happening with respect to Roderick Lewis. Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't see a connection between the two, but I understand the honourable member's point. And the answer to the honourable member is that I'm not in a position to comment because I don't know the facts that you have shared with the House today. I assume they are accurate, but I'll certainly attempt to verify them if you'd like me to in the next little while.
Supplementary.
Speaker, the Premier may see no connection, but I think the public does. I think the public sees a raw deal and knows a raw deal when they see one. They see employee after employee getting ripped off by pension plan after pension plan, and the Government of Ontario buying out somebody with a $220,000 annuity and an increase of his pension indexed for life. That's what they say, and they see, and they say it stinks, and they know it stinks, and you know it stinks, and that's why you're having to renegotiate the deal. That's why you're having to renegotiate the deal.
Supplementary.
My supplementary to the Premier is this. I wonder if the Premier can comment on the fact that as a result of the accounting changes, which he will be aware of, the amount of surplus in Ontario will grow by the billions as of January 1987. Company after company, instead of applying to withdraw surplus, are simply not going to be making contributions to the plan, a kind of withdrawal by the back door. I wonder if the Premier can tell us whether he intends to do anything to ensure that employees can get some control of these funds, that they can be guaranteed some degree of indexing for these funds, some provisions for early retirement, some assurances that we're going to have control by workers of these plans and not control by employers of surpluses amounting to billions of dollars in the province of Ontario. Speaker, my honourable friend opposite would be the first one to stand up and criticize us if hydro rates went up more than he felt they should at the same time. And so I don't see necessarily some of the connections that he would want to draw in this House. I see more of a connection, for example, between the pension fund of Ian Deans and Mr. Lewis than I would with hydro in the circumstances. But let me just say to the honourable member, the issues that you address in your broad sweeping question are issues that are being addressed by this government. You address the question of employee participation on the funds, the administration of the funds, and I think that's a very legitimate point that you make. It's something that's concerned me in the past, as well as some sort of inflation protection. You criticize the fact, and I'm not aware of the details, that Hydro is not making a contribution this particular year because of a surplus there. What you're looking at, obviously, is a situation where the various interests are balanced, protect the integrity of the pension funds, and not bankrupt companies that are making these contributions. I have not directed Ontario Hydro, and I don't believe the minister has, on how much to contribute to the pension fund, and I have no accurate, up-to-date information on the integrity of that fund. But the broad questions that you have addressed in your question are being addressed by the minister and others in the government at the present time, and we hope that in the near future there will be legislation coming forward that you'll have a chance to comment on.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, if a topping up of his pension and a guaranteed indexing for life is good enough for Roderick Lewis, why isn't it good enough for every single worker in the province of Ontario?
Premier.
I'm not trying to defend the Roderick Lewis situation. It was, well, Mr. Speaker, why wouldn't you put the question? Why wouldn't you put the question? Why wouldn't you put the question? I think the appropriate question would be this.
Order.
If a guaranteed job for life is good enough for Roderick Lewis, why isn't it good enough for everybody else in the province? That's the appropriate question. And I say to my honorable friend, I would love to see that for everyone, but you, my honorable friend opposite, will know the insecurity of any particular path you choose along in life, and we just don't have that situation where we have guaranteed jobs for life in this province.
New question, the member for York South.
Yes, you do. The expert on the double standard. I'd like to ask the Premier a question with respect to equal pay. Yesterday, we had the government rattling its sword with respect to withdrawing legislation on rent control. We've had the Attorney General, the Minister of Labour, doing the same with respect to Bill 105 on equal pay. I'd like to ask the Premier a particular question about hospital workers. You may be aware that an award came down from Kevin Burkett, the arbitrator, last week with respect to 28,000 hospital workers. It specifically did not address the question of equal pay, and in fact, housekeeping aides are now earning $2,600 a year less than cleaners, and the arbitrator said he would not address the question of equal pay because he had been told that legislative action was coming before January of 1987 with respect to hospital workers. I'd like to ask the Premier, if that is the case, and that is what the arbitrator believes, why has the government threatened that if hospital workers are covered by Bill 105, the government will in fact withdraw the legislation?
Premier.
I don't know, Mr. Burdett. I don't know who conveyed that information to him. And thirdly, I can't be responsible for the things that individual arbitrators around this province think. You know, arbitrators make a lot of decisions on the basis of things they think they know or think they don't know, but don't ask me to justify those decisions that they make or may not make.
Supplementary.
I'm not asking the Premier, Mr. Speaker, to justify what an arbitrator does. I'm asking him to justify the point-blank refusal of his government to include hospital workers, municipal workers, and nursing home workers under the only piece of legislation that we have seen in this legislature with respect to equal pay. Why have you cut those people out, and why aren't they being included so they don't have to go on their hands and knees to arbitrators, go on their hands and knees in collective bargaining to get the kind of equality that they deserve in the province of Ontario?
Premier.
Some people like to take their cases to arbitrators and believe in the collective bargaining system, but that, to answer your question specifically, the government has a definite plan on how to move ahead with the question of pay equity in the public and private sectors. And as you know, it's an enormous new change. We think it's been thought out carefully in terms of the timetabling and the inclusion at various times along the road. You obviously disagree with that timetable, but I think you have to have at least respect that the government is addressing these issues. They are complex. Wide consultations are necessary and required, and we are going ahead with that, as we said we were some time ago.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, if the Premier wants to talk about respect, perhaps after yesterday in his comments on rent control and the comments that have been made on equal pay, he and his party ought to reflect on the respect that they should have for the democratic will of this legislature with respect to legislation that's before it. I'd like to ask the Premier, if amendments are moved in committee that will extend the legislation to include hospital workers, is it still the position of the government that they are going to pull Bill 105?
Premier.
Speaker, obviously we're very interested in the deliberations of this House on every piece of legislation that comes before it, and we would hope that members would act in a responsible and constructive way in the discussion of that, of all those matters that come before the House. But my honourable friend opposite is in their last few weeks seen examples of groups of legislators who change their mind on various things, who bring in second, third, perhaps even third and fourth opinions on things, and this House only works well this House only works well if everyone has the same sense of responsibility for the outcome, and frankly, sometimes I don't see that in the opposition.
New question. Order. New question, the member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I'd like to ask a question about responsibility, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address my question to the Premier with respect to the matter of the Conflict of Interest guidelines. We've now seen, as has been revealed publicly lately, the study of Mary Eberts. We've seen the work of Glenys Wright. We've seen the review of John Robinette. We've seen the work of the Public Accounts Committee. We've seen the Blake Castles report. We've seen the Legislative Assembly Committee report. We've seen the Aird report, and we're now about to have another Legislative Assembly review of the Aird report, all accompanied by the Premier's unique interpretation and media hype over his perspective of the Conflict of Interest guidelines. My question is, in light of this dance of the 8 veils that the Premier has gone through over the past 6 months, is there a Conflict of Interest guidelines in place? Are you accepting your responsibility for the administration of enforcement of them?
Premier?
The answer is, Mr. Speaker, yes, and I should tell the honourable member opposite that the government is working at the very moment on a new act that will be brought hopefully very shortly in front of this legislature that will encompass a number of the suggestions of Mr. Aird, that will put it in statute form, that will bring in an independent arbiter, and legislation that will encompass all members of this House. So we will never have some of the vagaries that have plagued us in the past.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, if the weakened 1985 guidelines that this Premier put in place are now in force, if the Premier is saying that he is responsible for the administration and enforcement of those guidelines today, can he tell me why there's been no amendments, new filings, or disclosures based on the Aird report to date?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I think if you'll check with the clerk, I think those have been done.
New question, the member for Bellwoods.
Yes, I have a question about yet another example of this Liberal government's penchant for squandering taxpayers' money in platinum handshakes. And I'd like to ask the Premier if he recalls the former president of the UTDC, Mr. Foley, if he recalls that Mr. Foley's salary in 1985 was $200,000 a year plus something called an annual deferred compensation payment of $37,400 a year, and which was referred to as a golden handcuff, and additional bonus on a per annum basis of up to $40,000 per year. If he remembers all of these things, can he explain to us why Mr. Foley was given a platinum handshake, which appears to be in the vicinity of $500,000, $500,000?
Premier?
I say to the honourable member, I don't think his facts are quite accurate in that particular situation. You're right that Mr. Foley had a contract with the UTDC as the president of that organization. There was some deferred compensation in that contract, but with respect to the severance, as I understand it, he was given 2 years severance when he was let go by the board, or they'd arranged for a settlement. I think the honourable member, if he checks normal commercial practice, will find that that's a normal commercial practice. I understand that the board of UTDC had legal advice. They talked to McCarthy, and that was the settlement that was arranged that is common in the private sector.
Supplementary?
It's all very well to pretend that we're talking about a private sector settlement. The Premier knows full well that Mr. Foley is a civil servant. He is recorded in the public accounts at the management level of the Ministry of Transportation as far back as 1970. Is it not a fact, Mr. Premier, that Mr. Foley, as a long-term public servant at the management level, had accrued generous pension benefits, that he was no more entitled to a $500,000 settlement than Mr. Lewis was entitled to a $2 million settlement? And I want to ask again, what is this weird penchant you Liberals have for squandering taxpayers' money on on to get rid of civil servants that you don't seem to want around anymore, while at the same time you refuse to give ordinary pensioners a fair deal in inflation protection.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that my honourable friend, for whom I have great respect and is usually extremely accurate in his facts, would want to be accurate in these circumstances. Well, I'll answer. Well, we're very happy to share them with you. I'm sharing them with you right now. Mr. Foley, I believe, was the president of UTDC for some 13 years. UTDC, I don't believe he's constituted as a public servant. Public servants don't make $200,000, whatever you quoted him as making. He was the president of that corporation. It was owned by the taxpayers, but and ran as a private sector company responsible to an independent board. It was not $500,000. Your facts are wrong. It was 2 years' salary, which I believe was, as I recall the facts, was $320,000. That was a decision made by the board. So if you want to, I'll share all those facts with you. I think those are the facts as I recall them.
New question, the member for Brampton.
I'm waiting for the Conservatives to play their little game. Mr. Speaker, as you probably know, a very lucky couple in my riding won something in excess of $11 million in the recent Lotto 649. I'd like to direct a question to the Minister of Tourism and Recreation. There was some discussion some time ago about the question of capping the awards, and I would like to know what steps have been taken with reference to capping those awards.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, many people from time to time have expressed their opinion to me that the $10 million, 11, 12, is too much for one person to win. They have suggested, and it's my personal view, that this amount should be capped at something below the $10 million mark, and that the balance of the prize money should be allotted to more people. As you know, the Ontario has made this recommendation to the Interprovincial Lottery Corporation, but however, we're only one player. The other provinces have not agreed.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to inquire as to whether or not, in light of that fact, whether or not any follow-ups are made by the ministry in terms of looking into how those particular winners have been able to deal with the question of their winnings.
Is going to deal with the question of the winnings.
Order. Minister, order.
Mr. Speaker, I think any follow-up by the Lottery Corporation has shown that the funding that most of the winners receive have been handled very responsibly, and I know that the Lottery Corporation, during their interprovincial meetings, are still discussing with their other provincial colleagues the question of capping that total amount.
New question, the member for Brantford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology regarding the IDEA pork barrel portfolio you're now in charge of. I'd like to ask you about a couple of the companies with close ties to the Liberal Party who received investments from IDEA. First of all, about WIDA Systems. I'm sure the Minister will be aware that the Public Accounts Inquiry found that the bulk of the $3 million invested by IDEA into WIDA Systems did not go to developing new technology, as is required by IDEA, but rather went to the retirement of long-term debt and was not used as was anticipated by the Board of Directors of the IDEA Corporation. My question to the Minister is, in view of this fact, what steps has he taken or will he take to recover for the taxpayers of Ontario that $3 million investment?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Concerning your question, I might say that as of June the 30th, 1986, all things connected with IDEA Corporation are being looked after by the Ontario Development Corporation. And there are many corrections being made in the way things were previously handled. We are also not very happy with the results that the committee received and where that money was spent. And this will be one of the things that Mr. Jack Bedell will be looking into in his inquiry.
The Minister...
Supplementary,
Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that he is responsible for the operation of the Ontario Development Corporation. And is the message you're putting out that any company that walks in with a Liberal lobbyist can get millions of dollars, no strings attached? Now, by way of supplementary, I want to ask you about the $5 million that's going down the drain with Graham Software. I want to ask the minister if he is aware of this quote. When 1 month ago, Mr. Terry Graham, the president of Graham Software, said to a periodical in this city, he said, and I quote, "My company's predicament began when Ontario's Liberal government closed the doors on the Idea Corporation. We didn't know how our investment was going to be treated, and we still don't know how it's going to be treated." Now, the negligence on the part of the minister and his officials is appalling. My supplementary to this is, will the minister take steps to recover as much of that $5 million as possible? We don't need a whitewash inquiry. The taxpayers deserve a portion of that money back because of your negligence.
Question's been asked.
I think actually the member had 3 questions there, but I'd like to deal with the last one. And I can assure you that we will do whatever we can to recover any of that $5 million that is left. But I wonder, I'm wondering, are you saying that, in other words, you set up the Idea Corporation, you said there were your directors that were there were your directions that they were following. Are you saying that there should have been political interference from me as a minister?
Order. New question, the member for...
The question of the Premier.
The new member for Sudbury East.
Question of the Premier regarding Falconbridge Nickel and its recent announcement to eliminate a further 275 jobs. Since Falconbridge Nickel last year was able to find $41 million to reinvest in Norway to refine nickel from Botswana, and since Falconbridge Nickel last year was able to find $600 million to buy Kidd Creek and then immediately lay off workers, and with this recent announcement and the fact that Falconbridge has never lost money in the Sudbury area, never, will the Premier now establish a committee with the powers necessary to review Falconbridge's announced layoffs, to get the financial statements of the company and the future plans so that we can put an end to this type of practice so that these layoffs don't occur and future layoffs that might be forthcoming?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, to the honourable member, the questions that the honourable member is raising are disturbing to me and to the government. It's something we are watching very closely. As you know, there's been a collapse in the price of nickel in the last 18 months. A number of the operations are threatened and being downsized here in the province. The points you make, though, are good points. I hope to be having a meeting with Mr. James of Falconbridge in the very near future to discuss some of these very questions. I appreciate the constructive suggestion you've made. I'm not in a position to adopt it today, but on the other hand, let me say I'm not ruling it out.
Supplementary?
Well, a supplementary, since you're going to meet with Jesse James. Is the Premier aware that Falconbridge Nickel last year worked excess hours beyond the permit levels under the Employment Standard Act? And is the Premier aware that Falconbridge is discontinuing any mining development in the Sudbury Basin, any mining development, which is the death knell for Sudbury? And based on these 2 last facts alone, doesn't the Premier think it's appropriate to establish a committee to look into it? Because we cannot have resource-based companies, the largest employers in the North, playing these types of games, and it's going on right across Northern Ontario. That's why we have 14% unemployment.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the points the honourable member is raising, and I am concerned about the long-term plans of Falconbridge, particularly in the Sudbury Basin area, as well as I am of other mining companies there as well. It's something I will be looking into, and personally, I will report back to the honourable member any information I glean, and then I will solicit his advice and the advice of others on perhaps other initiatives that should be taken. I'm not in a position to tell you what those could be today. It is worrisome, and the long-term viability of Sudbury is, of course, directly affected thereby. But I'm sure the honourable member and I will have an opportunity to discuss this on many more occasions, but it is a worrisome matter.
New question? The member for Cochrane South.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. If he thinks he's going to avoid a forensic audit that was unanimously approved by the Public Accounts Committee by the Bedell report, guess again, my friend, it's not going to happen. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister in charge of industrial development in this province, and I specifically want to refer him to the unemployment situation in Northern Ontario. Your government's own figures show an unemployment rate in Northern Ontario now standing at 11.3%. We have unemployment rates in North Bay of 12.8%, Thunder Bay at 12.8%, Sault Ste. Marie at 15.5%, Sudbury at 10.8%. We have specific layoffs in many communities, single industry communities across Northern Ontario over the past 6 months when you have been responsible for the development of the industrial capacity of Ontario. I want to know what new programs you put in place to help these laid-off resource workers.
Mr. Speaker, as has been stated on previous occasions, we are also very concerned about the unemployment problem in the North. And I might say to you that I don't think that you would find that any government has moved as quickly as this government has to try to correct some of those problems. I might reiterate some of those. The announcements by the Premier of several of the ministries or parts of the ministries that have been moved to the North. The visits that our ministries staff have made to the North. The appointment of a assistant deputy minister from the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Technology for the North. A new conference that we're holding on the North, which comes up in the first part of November. The new ventures program, some of the tourism programs, and also many of the grants that have been made or the loans that have been made under the Northern Ontario Development Corporation, which are expected to create thousands of jobs in the North.
Supplementary, the member for Cochrane South.
Mr. Speaker, to the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Technology, not one laid-off resource worker will be helped by any of the nonsense you just recited in this House. It's all the Premier's optics, no substance at all, no help for the single industry communities of Northern Ontario, and you have the nerve to stand up there and try and claim you've done something. And whilst we're talking about the resource workers in Northern Ontario, what have you, as Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology, done to protect the workers in the sawmill industries of Northern Ontario who are facing layoffs because of the countervailing duty case in the United States? What have you specifically done vis-a-vis the United States and the international trade?
Order. That's the third time you've asked the same question. Minister?
Going for the leadership again.
As my parliamentary assistant just said, what were you doing for 42 years that we got into this predicament? Again,
You lost the leadership.
Order. Order.
Lost the leadership.
Order. Minister?
Again, I would reiterate, I don't believe that any previous government has ever moved as quickly to try and do something for the job creation in the North as the Premier in this government.
Order. The member for Nickel Belt with a new question.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier. The Premier was in the Assembly yesterday afternoon when I asked his Minister for Municipal Affairs to put on hold the decision to appoint a Reeve in Chapleau rather than have him appointed by the Minister. The Minister refused to either put the decision on hold until a delegation had come down to talk to him or to rescind the decision. In view of the importance of this matter, would the Premier either ask his Minister to do that or tell him, in view of the fact that tonight in Chapleau the new Reeve is to be sworn in, the new Reeve that's been appointed by the Minister of Municipal Affairs?
Premier?
I'm sorry, I missed the request. Are you asking me to tell him something or order him to do something? You know me, I never tell or order anybody to do anything. I just sort of take advice and try to develop a consensus. But I will pass on your heartfelt remarks to the Honourable Minister for his reconsideration.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know when I've ever seen such a patronizing and insulting attitude towards a small northern community as is being demonstrated by the Minister and the Premier by appointing a reeve. I asked the Premier, would he tolerate for one moment his minister appointing a mayor of London, Ontario, if the present mayor moved away?
Premier?
Against the wishes of the community, against the wishes of the
Are you talking about
council.
the present mayor of London or the last mayor of London? Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the point the honourable member is making, and it's being, as you know, and as I reheard I wasn't aware of the situation, and I heard the honourable minister respond yesterday that he's got to consider this in the context of public policy right across the province, and it's very difficult to deal with on an individual basis. But given the intensity of your feeling, you've raised it 2 days in a row, and you raised it in the statement period of yesterday, and the strong advice that you have, I am sure that the minister, being a thoughtful, sensitive person that he is, tries to take other people's advice into consideration, and then he makes up his own judgment. But he will hear what I am saying, he'll hear what you are saying, and he will, I'm sure, reflect on that, and if he feels that on the basis of your entreaties he should change his mind, then I'm sure that he will do that.
New question. The member for Hyde Park.
Si j'ai l'occasion de poser ma question. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, my question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Premier. The 6th of September, in an interview in the daily newspaper Le Droit, the Minister for Francophone Affairs had requested the replacement of the Speaker of the House because he is not bilingual, and the Prime Minister is open to this idea. The Prime Minister, the Premier, David Peterson, would be open to this idea. What I'd like to know is whether the Premier and his government shares this public opinion that has been expressed by a member of his cabinet with regards to the lack of confidence to the Speaker, and what I'd like to know is his position at this point in time.
Premier?
I would like to say to the member from Hyde Park that I didn't really understand his question. What my position on what question is? What question are you asking? What is your problem? Mr. Speaker,
When a cabinet minister demands, when a public minister demands the replacement of the Speaker and publicly asks that he should be replaced because he's not bilingual, I just wanted to ask you, is that your position? Are you going to give him the same package retirement deal as was given to the clerk? Or are you open now to the Ottawa precedent of electing a new Speaker? You're the one that should answer it, not me.
Premier?
he believes that all members should be bilingual like you are and as other members are. Apart from the clerk, he is bilingual, and the same thing applies to the Speaker, and I hope that in the future all the members of this House will be able to discuss any issue, both in French and in English. This isn't a very extreme position because, as you know, the minister has very strong opinions with regards to Francophones living in Ontario, and it's a position, a point of view that goes along well with his ideas. There's no problem with this regard.
The member for Welland Thorold.
My questions to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. I have here, Mr. Minister, the $12,000 Insurance Bureau of Canada advertisement from this morning's Globe and Mail headed, "It only takes a minute to see why auto insurance rates keep going up." It contains pictures of 9 different accidents that have taken place across Canada, and then very small print it says at the bottom, the accidents depicted did not occur at the time or the place shown. I wonder, Mr. Minister, if you would not agree that this is an inappropriate use of hard-pressed motorist premiums for a self-serving ad like this, and would you not agree that this use of phony photos is a degree of deception like the claims premium ratio the insurance bureaus put out and you repeat in this House?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the advertising that is done by the insurance industry has got nothing really to do with me at all, and they're free to do with what they wish. I should also point out that how can you say that's deceptive advertising when in fact they have a disclaimer in that ad telling you that exactly what the pictures are?
Yeah, supplementary. In small print. I don't think you need the ad at all. They couldn't get a better spokesman they knew for the insurance companies of this province. By way of a supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I would like to point out that this ad shows these accidents in Ontario, Alberta, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia, which are forcing the rates up there. But it doesn't mention Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or British Columbia. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Minister, don't you realize that they didn't dare show them in those western provinces with the public plans because rates haven't increased in those provinces for 2 years? Why do you continue to stubbornly refuse to investigate and publicize the rates and the fairness of those plans in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and BC, which, if applied here, could save Ontario motorists between $1.5 and $750 million annually? Why don't you get out of the insurance company's pockets and do something for the people of this province?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've always tried to be accommodating to the member from Welland Thorold, so I'm going to give him that information right now. This is the situation, and I wish you would take out your pencil so you can get these figures straight. Okay? This is the cost for insurance for a married male, age 30, driving to and from work with no accident record and no traffic violations. Coverage, $1 million public liability and property damage, $100 deductible collision, $50 deductible comprehensive for a 1985 Celebrity sedan. Okay? Now, in Vancouver, the insurance would be $618. Kamloops, BC, $524. Regina, Saskatchewan, $500. Winnipeg, Manitoba, $493. In Ontario, London, $452. Kitchener, $462. Ottawa, $461. Toronto, $555.
Better get a new researcher, Mel. Your numbers are all fuzzy.
New question. New question.
David Starr. Go ahead, Starr. Give me your point.
Order. Order. New question, the member for Eglinton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for bringing the House to order. I have a question for the Minister of Colleges and Universities. The Minister of Colleges and Universities is reported as making some rather bizarre remarks at a recent meeting of university presidents dealing with the state of university financing. The minister is quoted in the Toronto Star as saying, "The fact is, were we to ignore post-secondary education, we might get a majority anyway." Does this particular remark explain why the government has failed to provide an adequate increase in operating grants to the university system?
Minister?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that. Just before I do, let's compare the misinformation of this member with the misinformation of the Leader of the Opposition, who asked me a question a while ago about a program on apprenticeship at Conestoga College. The fact is that Conestoga College was asking for that program since 1981. We got the letter that he referred to on October the 10th, and on October the 14th, yesterday, we approved the program.
You're not answering the question he was asked. Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The member had a point of order?
Minister a question. He did not respond to my question. He responded to an earlier question. If he was proposing to stand up to respond to an earlier question, he should have done that in his place.
Fine. I appreciate your help, and I'll ask the minister to respond to the question.
Did he go home?
Where's Larry?
Mr. Speaker, carrying on with my... I'm sorry to divert like that, Mr. Speaker. I really do apologize for that, but I think the point had to be made.
You don't have to apologize.
apologize for the facts.
The member from Eglinton quoted a statement which was asked in this context, what about your priorities with respect to post-secondary education? And I said, our priorities are not based on crass political gains. We really do have a firm commitment. We have an unbending commitment towards redressing the damage that has been done to our university system over a 10-year period. The record shows that we've taken some very substantial steps, and there's a lot more to do. But the fact is, that's not going to get us a majority, and it's not going to determine the outcome of the next election. You know, there are other issues which will speak to that forum. My comment was and is today, we are making those commitments because we really do believe it.
Tell Larry to pick up the phone and call Ottawa.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the record in the Star speaks for itself. I would ask the minister, though, is the minister stating with his reply that an increase in operating grants of less than 4% is in fact adequate for the university system in Ontario? Is that what we're to understand from his reply?
1985. We have taken more steps to redress problems which we inherited than were taken in the previous 10 years. You look at the community college system.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, the point is that there is much to be done. We started a building program. We started rebuilding campuses. 4 new buildings, first time in several years. We turned around the system in community colleges, which was a disaster a year and a half ago. And Conestoga got their program. Is there more to be done? The simple answer is yes.
New question. Order. The member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question, Mr. Speaker, is to the Minister of Community and Social Services. We don't have a lot of daycare in Ontario. We don't have accessible, affordable daycare. And the minister has given a deadline of the end of this year to remove indirect subsidies from daycare centres where fee-paying parents are able, because of indirect subsidies, to keep the cost per child down to about $4,000 a year. Would the minister tell us what mechanism he has put in place to allow daycare centres and families to continue in operation with child care services provided at municipal daycare centres within the next 12 weeks?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the prohibition against indirect subsidies for municipally operated daycare centres comes from the federal government. It does not come from the province. They have indicated very clearly that they are not prepared to share funding for that particular purpose. As a matter of fact, they indicated that 3 years ago. And all of the municipalities that were permitting that to take place were told 3 years ago. When this government took office, that was one of the problems that was brought to my attention. At that point in time, the decision had already been made to cut that off as of December 1985. I extended it for 1 more year, a full 12 months. And all the municipalities were advised of what the situation was. We have indicated to them that we are quite prepared to work with them on an individual basis, as I presume the previous government offered. I don't know, but I presume that. We also indicated to them that a number of them have the option of increasing the income level at which they could provide subsidies, which we would support, and which many of them refused to do. We've made those offers. The other point I would like to make, Mr. Speaker, is that in those areas where there are indirect subsidies, there is no discrimination whatsoever as to what the income level is. In other words, a family with an income, let's say, of $20,000 would get the same kind of subsidy as a family with an income of $50,000. Now, the subsidy program, which is offered, the subsidy program...
Order. Supplementary.
Thank you. It was very disordered, that response, Mr. Speaker. You're quite right. Mr. Speaker, the minister knows that in Thunder Bay, for example, the cost for a family can go from $17.50 a day to $28 a day, or a rise of about $3,000 a year for the care of one child. What mechanism has he put in place to ensure that those Thunder Bay facilities are going to be in operation and that the families who get care now at those centers are going to be able to continue getting care in 12 weeks?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Thunder Bay, as in every other municipality, one that happens to be in my own area, have had 3 years to put a practice, a procedure into place. We have indicated to them that they could re-examine the kinds of cost structure that they're facing. We are quite prepared to sit down with them on an individual basis and work out a solution to their problems on an individual basis. We have told them that. But we are not going to continue the indirect subsidies.
Time for oral questions has expired.